let's say you were smoking and you didn't you didn't quit smoking. You continued to smoke. That maybe move you one rung down on the ladder, right? Same thing. If you had, say, diabetes, right? And you didn't treat your type 2 diabetes, maybe another half rung or another rung down. So even if you didn't treat those conditions, which we would never recommend, you'd still be net positive if you just exercise. And there's not a combination of hormones or supplements or anything that can have that effect. So they've found nothing that can replace it.
It's my pleasure to welcome Rick Mayo.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
So I think it'd be kind of interesting for our audience to hear a little bit about, just talk about your journey into your career. Like, how did you get into personal training, into the fitness industry? Where did that stem from? Maybe it's something that you were always into fitness, like in high school. Just talk about that.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I played sports. I was, moderately good, probably better at preparing for sports, which was sort of where the fitness side came in. My dad bought a weight set when we were like 12, the old weights with the concrete.
Oh, yeah.
Had a poster and we did every exercise on the poster. And then
that poster up there, you just follow
scratch our heads for like 2 weeks, and that's kind of where a lot of folks got started. Same with me. And then in college, I was bouncing around to different people's homes and different health clubs and was paying my way through school as a personal trainer. And I thought, it'd be nice not to travel around everywhere. And it's a real high-end service. So why don't we put 4 walls and a customer experience around this really high-end service?
Yeah.
And so we opened in 1992 when I was a junior in college. And it was the first, at least as far as I know, there's no internet to confirm or deny this, but we were, as far as I knew, the first ever personal training center dedicated to just that service.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
So before that, was all personal training was really just go to the person's home. Is that what it was, and do that versus having an actual personal training establishment where people go to?
Exactly. Or you could work at a general service health club. Yeah, and you would become a personal trainer there.
Oh, sure, that makes sense.
Exactly. You would then have access to all of the members, right, to market your services. Yeah. But I can remember it was so new, Matt, that I would go into a health club and say, I would like to apply to deploy my services here within your membership. I'm a personal trainer. And you think about this now, they would say, what is that? What is a personal trainer? They had no idea what we did. Wow. And it was sort of like, well, we hold people accountable and they pay us for it. That was the infancy of that service. Now, if you look at coaching and, like colleges would have a strength coach, things like that. Sure. I think in that realm it was common, but it really wasn't happening in like the general population until right around that time, like early 90s.
There's been a lot of change, right? I mean, since I think back to the days and to the pictures, I think back to the pictures that I see of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like in the gym, probably Gold's Gym, right? In Venice Beach, California or whatever. And I mean, it was just, all weights, I don't know. Maybe they had, other things in there. I don't know, but it just, the gym was where you would just sweat and just lift, and it was hardcore, or at least that was my perception of it, right? Tell us how the fitness industry has changed over the last 40 years, 4 decades, from that to where today, I mean, it's very customized and there's all these custom elements to it.
There are. And I think, when you look at just general fitness, most clubs at the time that we opened were just general service health clubs. I think we were at the tail end of sort of the racquetball trend. I mean, fitness does have trends that come and go. Sure. And at the time, it was more like almost of a country club setup, right? Where you could go and they might have a restaurant in there and you could play some racquetball, and then there would be a small weight room. And then over time, the fitness, segment of these sort of general wellness centers became a bigger deal. And so you had your hardcore gyms, like you mentioned in the 70s, like the bodybuilder style gyms. Yeah, right. But then, science also starts to study fitness and what it does for you beyond the aesthetics, right? Like, I want to get in a certain shape for the beach. I mean, that was sort of the impetus of those bodybuilding gyms. Yeah. But eventually it was like, well, hey, fitness is good for anyone. Like, if you want to, look, our brand promise to our consumers, and it's so true, looking good, and that's a relative term, whatever that is to you, right? Yep. Feeling great, that's important, and living life to the fullest. So it started to become a viable solution for general health and just getting yourself to a healthier place. And so as that evolved, then boutique fitness jumped off. This is probably 15 years ago. Now, we were boutique fitness, opened in 92, but the real movement started maybe 15 years ago. We're in mass. And then it got real nichey where you could go in and just cycle, or, it might be based on a modality or a piece of technology or something like that.
Yeah.
And so now those are super prevalent, right? You see those everywhere. So you've got the general service health clubs that are still there. And then you've got boutique fitness, which is its own category. And within that, there's a lot of options
Those
also.
little niches like the cycling places and whatnot. I think that, the fitness industry, and I was thinking about this yesterday and leading up to us filming today for the podcast, the fitness industry had so much of an impact, I think, on professional sports. And specifically, I think it had an impact on professional sports, not with your, football and those, but other sports, specifically golf is what I was thinking about. You look back at pictures in the 50s and 60s and even 70s, and here's Arnold Palmer walking down the fairway smoking a cigarette, and some of the guys were even drinking during the time they were playing, to where golf is today and how that's such a niche fitness regime for golfers, right? So every sport today has their own training regime, and really as exercise science has kind of come into play, and how the fitness industry, it had so much of an influence on these sports. It's pretty amazing. I was just thinking about that yesterday. Yeah,
I think this is an interesting statistic that will confirm what you're saying. So when we originally opened, around 80% of our initial engagement was typically from females. And it was always around like weight loss and aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
And then we would by default then get the husbands, or, we would get some guys in the gym. At this point, we're closer to 60-40. And a lot of, again, it's just more, I think, commonplace to see guys coming to the gym for the reasons that you mentioned. They see their favorite athlete, whether it be a golfer, tennis player. I mean, geez, pickleball, you name it, right?
Pickleball's huge now.
But the science is proven. I mean, no matter what you do, what sport you do, getting some type of training around that is only going to benefit you, even for golf. Whereas to your point in the past, there was all these misconceptions about like, again, because fitness was only seen as a way for maybe a male to like get big muscles, right? Then it was like, well, you don't want big muscles for golf, so don't do fitness. But as you said, the exercise science is caught up. It's like, oh, wait a minute, it's mobility, it's club head speed, it's all the stuff. Things, right? Like a part of what we do, because we target 45 to 65-year-old age demographic with money, because personal training's more expensive. A lot of our customers play golf, so we have baked into our programming. Titleist Performance Institute has a certification specifically for golf fitness, and we implement a ton of it into our programming because a lot of our folks like to play golf.
Yeah. And now I've seen, I'm a coach, a youth sports coach several of my son's different sports teams. And, even like with his baseball team, he's on this travel baseball team. And he's right at the very precipice, right at the outset of that quote unquote travel ball. But I mean, the fitness programs for the kids is there, and I love it because I like to stay healthy. I like to train in the gym. I have my own things, and so with my kids, it's a bonding experience for me. With my son, with my two daughters, my one daughter maybe a little more than the other daughter, but we'll do that together, and it's time that we get to spend together. So now that's starting to come into play, and in fact, even in some of the kind of personal training classes I'm seeing where they're offering like father-son, father-daughter, mother-son, mother-daughter kind of sessions, if you will.
That's right.
Which is awesome. I really love it. So what are some of the trends that's happening right now? And, what is the evolution? Does mental science, mental health and science come into it? Because it's already kind of tied to it, right? A little bit. Yep. Do gyms and does the fitness industry start getting into, mindfulness and some of that? Because you kind of see that in the niche, like with yoga studios or others and mindful. Just curious what your viewpoint on that. And is the fitness industry talking about those types of things?
100%. And I think, we get a lot of these questions because if you are going to be hired to speak and talk about what's next, if you're a futurist, if you will, whatever that is, you really have to decide like, what's the best seat to sit in as this moves forward? Because there's a million niches, like where should we go? And a lot of them are coming from people who are looking to invest or want to get into the fitness industry, or maybe it's a young person who's coming out of college and they want to make a career in fitness. Like, where can I go? Where is it?
Yeah.
And I think this is the best way to describe it. Like if you think about wellness is a wheel, right? The best seat to be in would be the hub of the wheel, right?
No doubt.
And say it's a spoked wheel.
Yeah.
And then there's many spokes in that wheel. So you mentioned a few, like, okay, strength. Yes, you need that. Mobility, you need that, right? Recovery, and that could be sleep, right? nutrition, supplementation, which is a little different than nutrition.
Yeah, sure.
There's all of these spokes. And the key is if you can sit in that position of a hub in that wheel, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be all of those things, but you have to understand all of those things. And if you can approach each person as an individual, they're all different and they're in different stages of their lives and they need different things. And so you sit in this seat and then you can point them towards which of those spokes would be most impactful. But there's a lot, right? And that's a good thing. There's a lot of exercise science saying, hey, where do these things fit in? And in that advisory role, right, in the middle of that wheel is really the key. And that's I think moving forward, you're going to see a better blending of like a clinical setting with fitness. I mean, there's some really interesting doctors doing really great work on anti-aging and performance. And they're doing things like measuring telomere length and like, are you really younger on a cellular level? What's funny is about that, Matt, that when you dig in and you do all that, it always comes back to the things that we sort of already know, right? Yeah. It's like, listen, if you're say 30 years old and older, here's the prescription, right? And it's like, okay, strength first, because your metabolic health is really important. Yeah. And I'm not, when I say strength, everyone thinks like, oh, you with these big muscles. It's not that at all. But loss of lean tissue is catastrophic, not only to your metabolic health, which can drive obesity higher, right? Mm-hmm. But balance and just everything that comes along with it. Cognitive.
And it's harder to get it back as you age.
Big time.
I mean, I'm working twice as hard right now just to gain X number of pounds of lean muscle mass than I had to work just 6 or 7 years. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Like I would have already reached this goal and here I am 6 months longer and I still haven't reached that goal.
Right. Well, here's a great way to describe it. So let's just say that you were in the middle of a ladder, right? And you said, okay, exercise. What does that do? I'm on this rung of the ladder. Okay. If you just exercised, it would probably move you up, let's say 3 rungs on the ladder, right? Now, I'm not advocating this at all, but let's say you were smoking and you didn't you didn't quit smoking. Mm-hmm. You continued to smoke. That maybe move you 1 rung down on the ladder, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing. If you had, say, diabetes, right? And you didn't treat your type 2 diabetes, maybe another half rung or another rung down. So even if you didn't treat those conditions, which we would never recommend, you'd still be net positive if you just exercise. Sure. And there's not a combination of hormones or supplements or anything that can have that effect. So they've found nothing that can replace it. And that's just for general health. So then the next question is, well, what type of exercise? And as you mentioned, there's a million choices, right? And so bang for the buck, it's like strength first for any age bracket. Second is move more. And I think we underestimate just movement overall. And so the threshold, and I know this would sound like a lot for a beginner, but just imagine working your way up to this. And at some point you have to pay the piper to get these results, right? Try to move 3 hours a week. And let's say that there's 5 heart rate zones, right? And think of these as effort zones, 1 through 5. So you need to move 3 hours a week at, say, a zone 2 effort. And for anyone listening, that would be something I'm slightly winded, but I feel like I could do it all day. So think about brisk walking as an example.
Like a fast walk.
Exactly. And we're both wearing smartwatches. Like get your steps in, right? I mean, keep it that simple. So strength 2 to 3 days a week first. Next, move more. 1 day a week is the threshold. Get your heart rate up really high. And that would be like a zone 5. So if you look at, hey, I spend a lot of time in zone 2, the bulk of my time moving more. And then every now and then I'm going to get my heart rate really high. I think what we've seen traditionally is that a lot of folks will spend a lot of time in sort of that 3-4 zone. It's a derogatory term, but a lot of folks will maybe call that the garbage zone. So that might be like your boot camps or like you're just jogging, right? Great if you have a goal to run a 5K or whatnot. But if you're just saying, all right, listen, I'm going to start exercising or I'm already exercising, what's the best use of my time? Strength 3 to 4 days a week, right? Two minimally for most, right? So let's just say 3 would be ideal. Move 3 hours a week at a low pace, something sustainable. 1 day a week, get your heart rate up really high. And that could be like on a bicycle or something. So it doesn't have to beat you up. Right? You don't have to run sprints. You can, but there's a lot of ways to do it. That's it in its most simple format. And then you say, okay, great. So that would move me that 3 rungs up on the ladder, right? Perfect. And then like, okay, what about nutrition? Because that's always the Wild West. And it's like, do I go vegan? Do I go here?
That's the tough part, right?
Oh, there's so many. And all of those options are better than the traditional American diet. So we'll start with that. Like you probably can't go wrong. That being said, if you look at, again, strength being first and metabolic health being a real issue for us right now, most people are under eating their protein to a certain degree. So a good rule of thumb would be a gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. So if you're 400 pounds and you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to eat 400 pounds or 400 grams of protein, right? But if you said, well, I'd love to weigh 220, it's like, well, eat that, right? And that does a lot. I mean, there is some just through protein synthesis that can help you keep your lean tissue even without exercise, which I don't think a lot of people know that. And then additionally, there's just some side benefits. If you have to eat that much protein, even if you have to supplement with some type of a protein shake, and that can be vegan or pea or whey, it doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
Your satiety is going to go up. So if you're eating that much protein, you're less apt to eat junk food, right? Because you're just full.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot with friends and in family, just talking about, how important protein is, because of course, my personal trainer and other people have like just pushed that into me. Like, this is so important. Good. Like, it's so important. And my wife and I were debating this. I don't know. I think it was over the holidays, but we were debating about, well, can you have too much protein? I guess you could, right? You talked about it. Like,
theoretically, no,
but maybe not, right?
No, and there's some old misconceptions about like, it's tough on your kidneys and all that. None of that's true,
right?
So none of those things are true. So you can eat as much as you want. Now, it's just really confusing these days. You can
as much protein as you want.
Exactly. Just, hey, man, eat anything you want. Go for it. But I think it can be really confusing. I feel bad for the average consumer, because you can log on to Instagram and you've got some beautiful body there, and they're saying like the key to everything is to intermittent fast, or the key to everything is to eat keto. It's like, no, go plant-based. And I mean, literally, it's like you could scroll, and once the algorithm grabs you, each video or whatever, it's a completely different piece of advice. So it can be very confusing, but I would just say, like, keep it simple, right?
That's right. Simplicity is key.
Zoom out, strength first, move more, get your heart rate up every now and then, try to eat as much protein as you can. A good target would be, again, 1 gram per pound of desired body weight. If you just did that, you're putting yourself way ahead.
Yeah. That's key. That's good. Talk about culture. And you look at it from the lens of, hey, I'm a business leader. I want to build a great business. I want to build a great brand. Part of that stems from culture, right? And establishing the culture of the organization. What does that look like in the fitness industry? What does that look like? And also maybe kind of a derivative of that is keeping good people, right? Because I get the sense, and this is just my own opinion, but I get the sense that the fitness world is very transient. You're going to have people that are there, but hey, they're in fitness. They can do fitness anywhere. I'm gone. I'm out. Right. How do you maintain? Well, first of all, what does culture look like? And inside of a great fitness organization like yours, and then how do you maintain keeping your good people?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it sounds like one of these cliche things, but it really does start with your core values, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have those well established. I can run through mine if you want, but I think,
what are yours? What are your core values?
So first one is unimpeachable character, and to us that just means like dare to be that person that does the right thing, right? It's sometimes hard, right, to always do the right thing, but dare to be that person. Next is competitive spirit. And so we think, it's just fun to want to win and not at all costs, obviously through the lens of unimpeachable character, but like, grow or die might be another way to say that. Like in this, like you mentioned technology, like, man, you have to push, right?
Yep.
And if you're never sitting still, you're either moving backwards or moving forward. Yep. So
you're either growing or dying.
Yeah. And competitive spirit is part of that. Like you're built that way. We've got humor with a touch of crazy, because it's just fitness and we love practical jokes, and our team is always doing ridiculous things to each other. But when you look at that, Matt, like we are choosing franchise partners, franchisees through this lens. They are then hiring their teams through this same lens. Yeah. So this is how you start a culture, right? And then keep it simple is really important for us. And, when you look at that lens, I think Steve Jobs said it, like, if you can learn to think simple, you can move mountains. It's really difficult. Simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. I think that was Da Vinci said that. It's really hard to just add things, right? For the sake of adding things. But for the final lens for us is this going to move the needle? Is it simple? Can the part-time coach in Salt Lake City, Utah on a Thursday night implement this with integrity with their customer? If not, we can't do it. So if you start with that and you really live those and you choose, teammates, and then ultimately as an extension of that, franchise partners, and then you teach them how to go and then hire people through that same lens, that's a culture. And then you just keep showing up as that person. You stack a mountain of evidence that's who you are over time. And that's who you become, right? I mean, you could put a lot of lip service to it, as a lot of companies do. This is, we're customer service. It's like, all right, come on, look.
Right. No.
Right. Exactly. Right.
You've got to live it. I mean, you got to live it. You got to believe it. And it's got to be, culture's got to be built, or those values, core values have got to be built into the daily mission, right? It's got to be 100%. Part of it. It's a fundamental of the daily mission. Speaking of culture, and I do want to talk about, your father's impact and how you saw him leave corporate America and then go open his own business. And I think that, for our audience, all of us have, either moments in time throughout our past where someone has made an impact on us, whether we realize it at the time or not. We usually don't realize it at the time, but we reflect back, and that becomes a motivator for us to step out, step up and do something great, or do something different, or do something that maybe we otherwise may not have been motivated or thought that we could do. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's a good story.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize how valuable it was, Matt, until maybe 5-10 years ago. So my dad, he worked in sales and he worked for a big corporation. And when I was old enough to recognize what was happening, so say like 10, 12 years old, he left that company and started his own sales business. So he was a manufacturer's rep for several different lines. I mean, it wasn't anything exciting. He was selling like doorknobs and door hinges and stuff, but at volume, right? Yep. Good business. But it was interesting to see him take that risk, step out on his own, build his own sales team. Yeah. He kept the same guys on his team. They actually bought his company, which is hard to sell a sales company. Yeah. They bought his company. It still has my name on it. So it still has his name on it, right? Great. So he was able to build that culture and build this really great company. And at the time, I don't even think I really thought about it. But when I look back, as we've gone through all these stages of entrepreneurship and continue to level up over time, it was a real gift to see that, because now helping other people in franchising leave corporate and become, entrepreneurs and be their own boss. We always say, like, be in business for yourself, not by yourself kind of idea. Yep. It's interesting to see them go through that transition. And I think through that, I've been able to say, wow, I was really lucky. I was given a huge shortcut that I didn't recognize at the time. Sure. Right. Yeah. Which was watching someone else go through it, take the risk, handle it with grace, and be successful. Yeah. That's good. That's good stuff. If you could go back, meet with your younger self, what kind of advice would you give your younger self? I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't be where I am. I'm so happy. It sounds so cliche, but I've literally never worked a day in my life. There's been some really hard times, as anyone goes through in 31 years of entrepreneurship. Of course. But each one of them was an opportunity to learn. I really enjoy learning and putting yourself behind the 8 ball. And I think if there's anything, and I probably still have a lot to learn, Matt, I really do. But at this point in time, the obstacle is the way kind of idea, right? It's really about the daily work. And you've probably had this. You set this big milestone. Yep. The process to get there is so difficult. And, and you literally, what is it? Entrepreneurship is a self-help journey disguised as a business. Right, yeah. I have to be a different person to build a team, right? That can get us to the next level and the next level. And what you learn over time is that is the key. So I don't think I would change anything, because each stage was insanely difficult. Yeah. In hindsight, it was a gift, right? Yeah. And then as soon as you reach it, it's anticlimactic, because you stacked enough evidence and you work so hard. That's right. How could you have not reached it? Right. So you're like, okay, whatever. Like, we sold this business. Amazing. Move the goalpost and go again. Yeah. Move the goalpost and go again. And I see this from now until I can't do it anymore is being the key. So I don't think I'd change a thing. Good. I like that. Motto, scripture, quote, creed, anything that you kind of live by? Is there anything that's front and center for you right now that is something that you try to keep right in front of you every day as you walk through each day? So many. You get your head so full of things. We have these funny T-shirts that say, do your job. And we wear them at work. And it sounds kind of harsh when you say that. Like, it's not like me screaming at someone to do their job. Right. But you have a lot of roles. Like, so Matt, you have a lot of roles in your life. You're an entrepreneur, you're a dad, you're a coach. Yep. Each one of those things requires a certain part of you to show up, right? That's what I mean by do your job. There's a famous Stoic philosophy too that says, like, who are you not to wake up and put your feet on the floor every morning and go do what you're born to do, right? Yeah. Do your job. And I think that's, to me, what that means. Yeah. And it's a joke as a T-shirt. You hear football coaches yelling it or whatever. Yeah. It's not even about that. It's like, who are you to the people around you, whether it's your team, your customers, your kids, your spouse? Be that person. Yeah. Show up, right? Yeah. Do your damn job. Yeah. That's where the integrity piece comes in. And to people that, do show up, be reliable, be consistent from start to finish all the way across. Not easy. It's simple, not easy, but not easy. Simple concept, not easy. I'm encouraged. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for sharing your story about your incredible journey on just building Alloy, and obviously your personal training and fitness journey.